Hey there, everybody. It is 9 o'clock. It is Tuesday night, so that means it's time for Cover 3. It's your girl, Miss M, Mandy, here in the nation's capital, D.C., Redskins territory, coming to you. And tonight, my guest host, Erica Anderson, and I are going to be talking all things fantasy football. I've got to get set for my draft. I think she needs to get set for her draft. You probably have more than one that you're trying to get set for, so we're going to hopefully give you some helpful advice and a few tips. Erica, good evening. How are you tonight? Thanks for joining.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I can't complain. I'm just before we get jumping into the fantasy football talk, I have to ask you because I've been scratching my head ever since this evening around supper time when I saw that the Pats made this mind-blowing trade. Have you obviously know about it? Yes.
Oh my gosh, I got the alert on my phone, and I'm still depressed. I love Logan Mankins. I love him, and I am scratching my head a little bit too, to be honest. This tight end that they traded for, I've never even really heard of him. Belichick must know something that we don't, because obviously the guy's a football genius. He wouldn't make a trade like that unless he thought it was worth it. But it's sad, and just I guess we'll have to see how the guy performs, and they got a draft pick out of it too. But yeah, I don't know. It was really surprising.
I just kind of sat there staring at the television set, and then I went and I got my glasses and I got real close and I was like, okay, am I reading that right? Yeah, okay, I'm reading that right. This dude was somebody that Belichick said he was he was like the best player, instinctive player that he had ever coached. The guy has been the past 5 years to the Pro Bowl.
I know.
I don't, man, all I can say is that either Bill is slipping or it's like you say, he knows something the rest of us don't.
Yep.
Because I was really thrown off by that. And you have to think that with a guy who has been that integral a part of the line, what must Tom Brady be thinking about that?
Yeah, I know, because Brady's been very vocal about, how close he and his O line are, and obviously the relationship there is very important between a quarterback and his O line, and I think a pocket passer like Brady, especially, they're pretty vulnerable there in the pocket, and it's just, he's been playing with the guy for as long as he has, and that has to be a huge blow, and I'm wondering now, with, like you said, the integral part that Mankins was, is what is the chemistry going to be like on the line now? And I know Belichick said that they're going to probably just fill his position in house, but I have to wonder, with the younger guys on the line, how is that going to affect them? How's that going to affect the mindset on game day, and how they react on the line? And I'm a little nervous to find out, to be honest.
Well, you would think that since these guys have, for the most part, if I'm not speaking out of turn here, but for the most part, I believe that the O line has been pretty much solid and standard. It has not had many fluctuations over the years. So you would imagine that missing one guy may not be as bad as we think it is because everybody else is going to group around the new guy or whoever steps in for Mankins. I was just kind of thrown off by it. I didn't get that at all, but this is the time of year that I really, as a football fan, that I really, really don't like. And I can only imagine being the player or one of his family members during this time of the year when all these cuts and trades and everything else is going on. That's got to be probably the worst part of football for everybody concerned, for coaches, for fellow players, for fans, for everybody, because you get attached to somebody and then they're gone. Yeah, but that was rather large football news. And speaking of large football news, poor Sam Bradford.
Oh,
Oh, I mean, has the kid is just, I don't know what it is, but I feel so bad for him, and to injure the same leg that he has had operated on, and Rams are sticking with their guy Hill. Not that I know everything about football. I mean, obviously I don't, but I don't know who this guy is. I don't think that I have watched any preseason games that have been on the NFL Network long enough to see him play. If he has, I have no idea what the Rams are going to do. But apparently they're sticking with their backup. So Mark Sanchez, it's a no go, and crying Timmy Tebow, wherever you are, sorry, I don't think they're going to want you in St. Louis. So there's that news too.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that, and since he came into the league, he got that huge rookie contract. It was just enormous. Ever since, I mean, he's really done nothing. He's just been perpetually injured. And I do feel bad for him because you can't really say whether he's good or bad because he doesn't really have time to prove himself because he's been injured. And to re-injure the knee he had surgery on, I mean, you have to wonder. I mean, I think his contract is up with the Rams next year. They're probably not going to keep him because business-wise, it doesn't make sense to keep him because he's just filling a roster spot and not doing anything. I think that Sean Hill, I believe he used to be a backup at the Jets. I believe. I don't know if that's right. He's 13-13. That's his record as a career record as a starter. So that's not really a whole, that's breaking even. I mean, so.
Well, at least the kid is 50-50. I mean, that's a better shot than no shot at all. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I feel bad for the kid. I know that I have one guy that I follow on Twitter, and Derek is a diehard Rams fan, and I can only imagine. I haven't seen too much in the Twitter sphere from Derek since that whole scenario happened over the weekend's games, but I can only imagine what Rams fans are thinking right now. They're probably beside themselves. And listen, if anybody can understand the feelings of despair that a fan has when their quarterback goes down with a knee,
Yeah.
I feel your pain, St. Louis. I really do. But
So
pardon, what
I
did you
think
say?
fans feel it too. Remember when Brady got injured? I think in '08 or '09.
Right?
Me out at very first game against I think Kansas City. Bernard Pollard on the hit and blew his knee, and we just Patriots Nation just a collective gasp. Oh my gosh. Matt Castle did step up. I think we went 10 and I think we won 10 games, which is pretty decent for having your starter out. But it's rough, and to have him be out last year too. I mean, the radio show I co-host with on Sundays, Oscar Lopez, he runs Graham Beauties. He's a huge Rams fan, and on Sunday we discussed it. And he's like, "Well, there you go." He's like, "I'm just hoping we can break even on our wins and losses." And he's like, "Oh, I mean, he's just like he had so much hope leading up to the." With the draft and everything, and Sam Bradford coming back, and then he's just like, "I give up."
Oh
So,
my God. Poor guy. I mean, well, listen, and with that kind of a loss, and not that he was, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in detail, not that he was one of those like top 5 quarterbacks that you would draft in fantasy, but that makes a whole big difference for your team. And so now let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about fantasy football. Now I have loved football for, I'm not going to reveal just how ancient I am, but I will say that ever since I was wee teeny tiny, I've been going to Redskin football games and have learned about the game from my dad. Love to talk the game with my son, who you know, it has served to be my football guru. The more and more the game has changed, rule changes and all kinds of other things, and just different ways of thinking about the game that I don't. He plays in multiple leagues. I can only handle one at a time, and I've only played for a few years. The first year, I was obsessive about it. I made all of these spreadsheets. You know, I couldn't just make a simple list. I had spreadsheets, and I had statistics, and I had pie charts. I mean, you wanted to, and that's just the computer geek in me, you know, making all of these lists and spreadsheets and all these other kind of things to try and compile my team. And the first year I played, I came in third. And then I relaxed a little bit and I made simple lists of like the top 5 that I wanted. And then in the case that all 5 of them were gone, who would be the next 3 that I would like to choose from? And guess what? I won. I was the only, by the way, the only female in the league. Thank you very much. And I won the championship the second year that I was playing. So this year that I'm playing, I am determined to go in with a little more knowledge and a little more strategy, and so I want to go ahead and bring you in here. Tell me how long you've been playing, how you have developed your strategy over time, and then we'll talk a little bit about your article that you just did for Gridiron Girl. So hop on in here, girl. Tell me about it.
All right. I think I've been playing, I would say, I think the first time I played was like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, something like that. You know, I had no idea, and some friends were like, hey, you want to play? And they knew how much I love football, and I was like, sure, you know, and I basically did what you did the second year. I made the list and did pretty well. I think I took third or something that year. You know, I love football. It's my great passion in life. I read everything I can. Like, you know, you're talking about the rule changes. I'm obsessive about which player went where, and I love to follow statistics. I feel like fantasy football is really an extension of that, where you can, you know, like I say in my article that we all have the teams that we root for that we're just crazy about, but being able to kind of be the master of your domain and being able to like, you know, build that team with, oh, I love this guy and I love this guy. I'm gonna pull them all together, and you get to make this mega team. And, you know, it has its drawbacks too, because there's some weeks where, you know, on paper you have the best fantasy football team. There is no reason anybody in the world should beat you, but you lose. And it's just, sometimes paper does not translate to actuality, but that's kind of the fun part of it too, is you get a tweak, you bench this guy and grab this guy off waivers, and, you know, it's a really the kind of the thrill of the unpredictability of fantasy football too that I think can be addicting. So it's a lot of fun. You know, this year I'm kind of I'm not getting too obsessive about my own team because I'm trying to, the league that we started with Gridiron Girl, I opened it up to beginners. I really want to encourage people that have never played before, because fantasy football is a very intimidating thing to get involved in when you don't know what's going on and you're like, well, I don't want to ask that person because they're going to think I'm stupid. It's typically a male-dominated type of thing, and as a woman, you don't want to ask a guy because he's just like, oh, stupid woman. I mean, not all men, I'm not generalizing here, but, you know, it happens. And so I really was just encouraging people that, you know, hey, come on, this is going to be competitive but fun. It's not intense. We're not playing for money. Let's just come on and we'll learn. And next year we'll do a little more of an advanced, you know, but our league settings are very basic. They're really catered to the beginner. So I just want to help as many people as I can love football and love everything associated with it.
I think that is awesome, and believe you me, sometimes, you know, sometimes there are guys out there who have actually, and I, you know, and I felt pretty good about. There was a guy that I was working on a project with who really wanted to play fantasy football, and he told me, he said, you know, my girlfriend really loves football, and I'm just learning about it. I really like it too, but she wants me to play in this fantasy league with her, and I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, so I gave him a few of the resources that I've used in the past, but, you know, a beginner league is an awesome thing because, you know what, Not everybody who has played fantasy football knew exactly what they were doing from the second that they hopped into their first league. There's no way that they did. So a beginner league is a pretty incredible thing. And along with that beginner league, I understand as well now that you have written the Fantasy Football 101 article on Gridiron Girl, which, if you want to tell us a little bit about that and give us some of the general tips that you've got from your article, if you want to go through a few of them, let's talk a little bit about it.
Okay, yeah, just like I said, I wanted to have something on paper that people could refer to. Beginner's tips, things that I wish I would have known when I first played. I think the biggest thing I stress in my article is you want to pick players that are consistent. You don't want a guy that gets big points one week and then nothing the next, or even negative points. I mean, that does your fantasy team no good. So you want consistency. It's really important. I go through, the quarterback. I go through scoring settings. I use NFL.com's fantasy scoring, but just to give people an indication of how they score, how it's multiplied, and how you end up with what you end up with. And I'll look at my article here, just how, the different types of drafts there are. There's the standard, there's the snake, there's, I think, the reverse, or the auction, excuse me, so snake, straight, and auction. Go through those, explain what they are, go through the different, just different, what am I trying to say, kind of how you can cope each game day too, like, with, okay, let's look at what this player played last week, well, now what do we do? And so I wanted to just get one long guide that, people could just have in one place and refer back. And I've heard some good things. Some people that have read it thought it was pretty good, so I'm happy to help any way I can.
Well, that's excellent. So now let's hop in with both feet here. So first of all, you need to know before you even begin, you need to take a look around on the site that you're using. Some people use NFL.com, some people use Yahoo, some people use the Fox Fantasy Football app. One thing that I can tell you that I have seen time in and time out and hear people complain about, like, it happens at least a handful of people every year. The app isn't working. The app isn't working. For the love of all things holy, look around on the site where your fantasy football league is. Test out the app not just on your laptop, but also on your mobile phone, because you never know. You may be in a situation where you need to draft on your mobile phone, or you may prefer to do it that way. So test it out a couple of weeks in advance, and then a week in advance, and then a couple of days before, just to make sure that there are no patches or updates. This is the computer geek in me giving you a little bit of friendly advice about that, so that you can at least get into the draft on draft day. And gearing up for the draft, a few things that you want to know as well are going to be what type of league you're playing in. Now, Erica, do you guys? I think that you may have mentioned it when we were talking about it a little earlier. You guys are using a standard league, is that correct?
We are, yeah. Just standard league where, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, kicker, and a whole defense, like a whole team defense. We're also doing standard draft, where, it'll go through, and then I think whoever picked last, then they pick first, and then it goes back through. So that, yeah, we're just trying to, like I said, do the easiest settings.
Right, and I like that. I kind of like, the person who picks first picks last next time. Sometimes it's just the same order repeated over and over again. And other times you will be in a league where everybody sort of gets the same virtual money to run their team, and everybody bids on a player as the players come up. That is, though, going to be for somebody who has played multiple times, is really very well versed, at fantasy football, who knows what they're doing, who knows the players and their values so well that they're not going to overbid or allow someone else just to push their bid up so that they don't have the money for somebody else that's coming up next. So if you are looking at what kind of a league, though, you want to make sure also that are you in a point per reception league, in a standard league, in an IDP league, which is individual defensive players league. Now, PPR, point per reception, and a standard league are pretty much scored the same way, with the exception, of course, of points being awarded per reception, and that is where a PPR league and a standard league split apart. Erica, are you used to playing in standard leagues, PPR leagues? Which ones have you played in the past?
I think I've just done the standard league where it's like if it's 0 to 100 receptions, you get this many points, and then anything above that, that like 3 points, 5 points. So that's really the only leagues I've played in before. Going back to the auction draft, I took part in an auction draft 1 year, and you have to be so careful because I was like paranoid about my money running out. So I was like, oh, I can't get that guy, and I can't get that guy. And then by the end, I had like hundreds of dollars left. And I was like, oh my gosh. But then there were other people who were like, by the time it was mid-draft, they had $9 left, and they got stuck with some, guy that never comes in. And so auction takes a lot of strategy. If you're taking place in an auction draft this year, I really recommend you really sit down and decide how much you're willing to spend on each player. If you're willing to spend a little more on this position, decide the max amount that you're willing to spend on a position. If it goes over that, you just need to let it go. It doesn't matter if it's your Tom Brady or if it's, it doesn't matter who it is. You need to let it go because that is not going to help your team.
Right, right. Well, I wouldn't even, that just would be, I think it would be a little bit out of my comfort zone to participate in an auction league like that. That would just kind of not be my bag. And as far as scoring leagues go, I've only been involved in standard leagues where it is not points per reception. It's actually, if your receiver catches a ball between 0 and 25 yards, 26 and 50 yards, 50 yards plus, etc. You get so many points. 6 points, of course, for a touchdown. You lose points for fumbles lost, for interceptions, things like that. So I've only ever played in standard leagues, and what's interesting to me is the shift in the value of players and the ranking of players as you look at a standard league ranking and you look at PPR, a points per reception ranking, because what happens in between the two is in a standard league, your quarterbacks are going to be, along with your running backs and your wide receivers, are going to be the first 3 types of players that you really want to make sure that you know how you're going to choose. And you want to make sure that you've got them ranked and you've got a list of guys in each of the 3 categories so that you can try and create a strategy where you're going to be making the most points not only per rush, but also, for however many receptions a guy has, a tight end or a wide receiver has, as well as how well your quarterback is going to do passing. With a point per reception league, it's interesting that the tight ends and the wide receivers are sort of the most important guys, along then with not just running backs like Alfred Morris, who is no slouch, by the way, and, just between you and me, if you get Alfred in conjunction with another really good running back this year, like, I don't know, Eddie Lacy, somebody like that, I think you're going to do really well, but I digress. What happens is that in a PPR league, your running backs really take a dip in their value and their worth unless they are receiving backs, backs who have pretty respectable numbers for receptions as well as their rushing. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at any cheat sheets that you have, you want to make sure that you're looking at the correct cheat sheet. Are you looking for the one for the point per reception league, or are you looking at the one for the standard scoring league? So that's another tip that I want to give you. So tell me a little bit, Erica, about your draft day strategy and how you rank your players and how you prepare yourself for your draft.
Um, so definitely, I'll check all the news, draft day, make see injuries. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest killer for any fantasy team will be injuries. So check that. Make sure, anything. I mean, a bruised foot, it could be anything. Because a bruised foot in preseason means he could have problems later mid-season if he tweaks that foot or something. And not to say that you would just not draft him, but you may want to hold off on making him your main back or your main receiver. For anybody that has drafted Wes Welker, you need to be careful. He has now had his third concussion in 10 months. That's scary. And to have him be your main wide receiver, his draft stock now for fantasy football has dropped way down. You do not want to make him your main wide receiver. I definitely look at consistency. For my receivers, I try and see is he the main target of the quarterback? Because otherwise, he's not going to get a lot of chances, and a lot of chances equal not a lot of reception yards. So I try and make sure that obviously they're starting and that they're kind of a favorite. Do the running backs stay in the whole game, or are they more of like a filler back that they bring in for short yardage? That doesn't do you any good either. So that's for the quarterback. Again, I look at consistency. Does he have injury potential? A lot of these mobile quarterbacks, they're great. They garner you huge points when they're on. But that largely depends on the defense they're facing for the week as well. So, I mean, if you have, obviously, RG3, mobile quarterback. But it depends. If he's playing a heavy run defense team that's really great at defending the run, that's going to, really make him stay in the pocket, which RG3 not as comfortable in the pocket. I mean, he's okay in the pocket, but he's not probably going to get you as many. So that's probably when you can bring in your two quarterback system and do your research and say, okay, well, RG3, he's my main quarterback, but this year, this week he's playing the Panthers defense, and Luke Kuechly's really great at getting the sack and containing the quarterback. So maybe I should switch that out for a pocket passer who Panthers defense is a little more vulnerable. So that's kind of the strategy I take with my quarterback mainly. I feel like my quarterback is really who I concentrate on because I feel like they can make a great, an interception prone quarterback. Just stay away. I feel bad for anybody that had Eli Manning last year because he was so interception heavy. I would have probably just benched him for the rest of the season. But then, your tight ends, the same way. You want to make sure they're the main target of the quarterback. Your defense, you get points for sacks. You want to have a team that's heavy on sacks. I'm probably going to try and get the Panthers defense. This is an animal. They're a team that is really great at getting to the quarterback. So Seattle's defense as well, they're pretty great. They get, I think, defensive gets points for defensive touchdowns and interceptions. So you want to look at a team that defense is really good at that. Kickers, a team that's scoring a lot is going to kick. They're going to kick field goals, and they're going to be kicking extra points, and a kicker gets points for that. So you want a high-scoring offense for your kicker. If you're picking a punter, you're going to want to pick probably the worst team in the NFL because he's going to be punting a lot. If, they're third and out every down or every series, well, my punter's the best because he just got a bunch of points. He racked up those punting yards. So those are really, the kind of the strategies I take with my players.
Right. So this isn't just, it isn't just, Oh, you know what? I love the Redskins, so I'm gonna draft everybody on the Redskins team because they're my favorites and I really like the way they play and I'll be set. Well, when the bye week comes, guess what? If you if you draft everybody from one team, and I know several people who use that as their strategy, then it's not going to fare, you're not going to fare too well. That is one thing that I don't think that I can stress enough is you want to make sure that you make a list of each of the different positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defense, kicker. With some of those categories, the more popular or the more quote unquote important ones, like quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, you want to make sure that you have at least five that in the order that you like them, or in the order that your research has said, you know what, Peyton, it's like Peyton and then Brady and then Rogers and then Breeze and then going on down the line and what have you. Of course, I know you would have it be Brady and then I
Yeah.
know that you. I will adjust. I will digress for that one. But you want to make sure that you've done your research. Look at the stats for the previous couple of years. On one really good resource is NFL.com, at least stats wise, because what you can do is you can look at stats for individual players, for units, for teams, and you can look at them for preseason, regular season, postseason, for I believe up to about 4 or 5 years back. And I find that to be invaluable. And I look at who was in the top 10 over the past three. I do 3 years worth of research when I'm looking up different players and defenses, and I try to see what their mean was over 3 years, and then rank them accordingly. You have to also be aware of their bye weeks. So let's say now you've got your top five or your top three in every category, and now you have to be very well aware of when you're mixing and matching all of these players and the defense and all of these other components on your team. You need to make sure you know what the bye weeks are so that you're not scrambling to set your roster on game day because you forgot, oh, Chicago's bye week is this week, or the Patriots have a bye week this week. You have to be really, really careful about that. That's something else that I think is very important to point out. Is know your bye weeks. Um, let's talk a little bit too about just some general tips. I was talking to my son Chad today a little bit about what advice would he give when he was talking to someone who is a first-time fantasy football player, or a fairly new fantasy football player who's trying to get better. And he said, you don't want to choose a ton of favorite players off of your favorite team. You want to make sure that you know the bye weeks. And if you're in a PPR, in a non-PPR league, in a standard league, you want to make sure that you go running back early and often. So that was the advice that he gave me. And I think probably the only other thing that I could chime in there with, as far as draft day goes, and some advice for draft day is, you don't just draft your team and then that's it. Watch the waiver wire. Be aware of the news. Check out the Monday and Tuesday reports after games, because you want to make sure you know what's going on with injuries and what have you. And Erica, chime in with some more advice. What else would you say as far as, now that you're compiling your team and you're getting it together, what advice would you throw out there?
On game days, I always check it Sunday morning. Now that we have Thursday games, if you need, because I've done this before, you're like, oh, just assume Sunday and Monday, and then you look at your team, and you're like, crap, that guy played Thursday, or he should have played Thursday, and I didn't substitute, and Thursday's gone. I mean, once the game day happens, once their game starts, you're done. The guy's locked in. If the guy on the bench started his game, you can't substitute. So you should check it. I would recommend Wednesday night or probably even Thursday afternoon to be safe. Check Thursday afternoon and make sure there's these letters next to. I when I played it at ESPN, it was so it'll say Q, it'll say P, it'll say O. You got to know that's questionable, probable, out. Pay attention to that because probable means they're probably going to play. Questionable means if I have a guy that has Q on it, I just substitute him because if you leave him in, you're probably going to get an empty roster spot with no earning potential. Questionable is just it's questionable, and I don't like questions. So and out obviously you know what you need to do. So yeah, and bye week with your bench, your bench is really to supplement for bye week and injuries. Make sure that your bench players don't have the same bye week as your regular roster because you are going to be SOL when it comes to bye week because you're not going to have anybody. And guess what? My number 2 running back is empty because number 2 running back has a bye, and then the guy, number 5 running back has a bye. So I'm done. And that's why you shouldn't pick everybody on the same team either because once they're all on a bye, you're kind of stuck. So yeah, but once you have your team, like you said, look at the players that didn't get drafted. There's a reason why the term fantasy sleeper has been coined because sometimes these guys you don't realize it, but all of a sudden they bust out this huge season, or let's say the main back gets injured, and then guess what? The backup's getting all the reps. You can claim that guy off waivers. It doesn't cost you anything, and all of a sudden, you have this phenomenal player. And use your injured spots too. They have your injured reserve. Make sure you use those if the guys, last year if you drafted Vince Wilfork, well, you're gonna have to put him on injured reserve because he was out all season. Pay attention to that stuff because once you put someone on injured reserve, you can claim someone off wires because you've now freed up a roster spot.
Right, right. Well, and speaking of individual players, I was in doing my research. I always like to see who, and you'll become familiar with terminology the more you play, who the sleepers are. I like to try and go with at least one pick every year that most people would think, what is she doing? Why is she choosing that guy? And then have him end up really maybe not making the most significant contribution for my team, but really in those games that come down to a point here and a point there, and I've played him, that he has actually come through for me. So, I'm looking around and I'm looking around this year, and, one thing that cracks me up is that more often than not when I've been doing my research, I'm seeing that Jay Cutler is this year's big fantasy sleeper. Um, I love me some Cuddy. I'm not, everybody who watches Cover 3 knows that I have this just really weird, fascination with all things Jay Cutler. I think it's the fact that he probably lights up on the sideline and has a scotch on the sideline. I'm willing to bet that he probably does, but, that's neither here nor there. But everybody is choosing him to be this big sleeper this year, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that because I don't think he's made it through an entire season for quite some time, at least not since when did he go to the Bears? Like 2008, 2009? I don't think he's played a full season. So the one name, though, that I did come up with as somebody who I may want to throw out there for somebody who is looking for someone that maybe they want to have as a filler on their bench is Travis Kelce. If you haven't read anything about this kid, you want to because he has put up very respectable numbers and has been very impressive in the preseason. And I think that he has the potential to give you at least a few reliable points if you're looking for something to sort of fill in on a bye week or something like that. That may be somebody that you may want to hold on your bench and fill in every now and again, just to see how he can help you out. One guy that I would definitely avoid like the plague this year is going to be Kyle Rudolph for me. Another tight end, of course, in Minnesota, where they're having a ton of issues with quarterbacks up there, because I don't think that they're quite. I think that there's still more flip-flopping to come up there in Minnesota. I don't think that that whole situation is on solid ground with their quarterback. So give me a sleeper pick and a avoid at all costs if you want to throw something like that out there for me.
Sleeper, trying to think. You know who's impressed me in preseason for the Patriots is Brian Tim. He's caught a bunch of touchdown passes. And I know it's preseason. People can say, oh, it's just preseason. Like, I hear that all the time. But preseason is there for an audition. And that guy has shown me, I mean, I don't know the starting potential there, but he's definitely showed he wants a spot. And I think, with Gronk's status being, iffy, I mean, he says he's going to play all 16 games, but, really, the guy's had back surgery, he's had knee surgery, he's had, that forearm broke twice. I mean, I love Gronk, I love him, but he's risky. So, depending on what happens there, Brian Timms would be a great guy to pick. Who I would stay away from, Manziel groupies. I don't care how much you love him. He's unreliable, and he may not even start every game. So stay away from him. He's not. Just stay away from him. I had to get that off my chest because there are
somehow I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
They're groupies, and I'm just like, I don't care. I just stay away from the guy. I would stay away from, I'm trying to think, depending on Stephen Ridley, the running back for the Patriots, ton of fumbles last year. I love the guy. He plays for my team, but I don't know that I would draft him. He's got butter hands. So, Welker, I wouldn't draft Welker. I love Welker. Okay, and I know he plays for Denver now, but I love him. But I just feel like he's a huge risk right now. Cam Newton, he's iffy too. I think. I mean, he just had when he bruised something or broke something. I don't know.
He cracked a rib in his lower rib cage.
Yeah, and last year he got hurt. He's just really inconsistent, which really bothers me. I'm kind of a person that really thrives on consistency and watching how a player does, and he may be someone that you could reserve for a bench spot, but I don't think I would have him as my main QB. I know a ton of people would disagree with me there, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot about sleepers and busts, and it's interesting to me that one I've seen. At least in every bust list that I've looked at so far this year, one person says Robert RG3. One person will always say Colin Kaepernick. My son loves. I'm sure Chad loves that because he is not a Colin Kaepernick fan. I don't. I feel differently, but whatever. But the one name that keeps cropping up as being a bust this year is Cam Newton. Over and over and over and over again. I see his name mentioned a whole lot. Like last year was not something that Carolina fans should expect would be the norm with him, and that it was mostly their defense last year, and I'm not going to say that he's the second coming of Joe Montana, but I don't think that he's a bad quarterback, and that's why maybe you don't want to have him. I got to go with you with the fact that his he's had a few like little nagging injuries here and there, and that has really bumped his consistency down. He's you know he, it's and then you had the whole pouty boo boo lip season where he would put the towel over his head and he would sit on the bench and kind of like we saw Johnny Football. They were being mean to me, so I flipped them off. It was that attitude. So I don't know how much of a bust I will believe that he would be as far as his skill. But I'm willing to bet that there are going to be some defenses out there that are going to know that he has, let's face it, if you even crack a rib, it can be uncomfortable. It may not be downright painful when you just crack a rib, but think about it. You breathe, and your rib cage expands and contracts. So you know that that's not going to be too comfy of an injury, and I bet you that there are going to be some defenses that are going to go after him. So in that regard, I would say he's kind of a risky pick. I would say probably the people that are the QBs that people are going to target the most this year are going to be, of course, the big three. It's going to be Manning, it's going to be Brady, it's going to be Rodgers. Drew Brees will come in fourth. Dallas fans, being who they are, will always pick their boy Tony Romo, who, by the way, is the kiss of death. I would say Jimmy Graham, of course, is going to be the coveted tight end. I think that you're going to have Calvin Johnson being the coveted wide receiver. And as far as running back goes, I don't necessarily think that there's going to be one solid number one. I think that AP may be one. I think that that there could possibly be some others thrown in there. Although AP is pretty much has been the favorite over the past few years. But who are some of your top picks? What names would you say that a lot of people are going to be looking for to grab early this year?
I think as far as quarterbacks, the ones you named, I also think Russell Wilson's going to be a hot pick this year. He tends to be one of the more balanced quarterbacks as far as running and throwing. Not as much. If you contain him in the pocket, he's not as good. So like I said, with what I said about mobile quarterbacks, you got to watch the defenses they're facing. But I think he's going to be a really hot pick. Running back, I think Monty Ball for Denver is looking good. Jamal Charles for the Chiefs is looking good. I tell you what, here's a guy that you need to get is Shane Vereen. He is back to the Patriots. That has been just great. I think last week he caught both of Brady's touchdown passes, so he's a back that catches and runs. He's really great. Receivers, Calvin Johnson, just like you said. Eric Decker, I like Eric Decker, and this it's not against Eric Decker, but it's more of the Jets got this phenomenal wide receiver, and they paired him with a quarterback that doesn't like to throw a lot, which makes no sense to me at all because Geno Smith runs. I mean, he runs a lot. He is one of those quarterbacks that I don't know how much he spans the field, to be honest. So the only reason I wouldn't make Eric Decker my main receiver is because I don't know how many reps he's going to get, and I could be wrong there, but that's my view on that whole situation. Tight end, if Gronk's healthy, he's probably one of the best in the league if he's healthy, and that's the gamble with Gronk. You know, defenses, like we said, I said Panthers. I've been impressed with them. Seattle. The Rams are supposed to have a pretty good defense this year. I haven't read a lot about them. I heard that that was from the person I talked to. But you want to like you said about NFL.com. That's where I go for my stats. I love it because you can go by year or you can go by career. If you click on a team, it'll tell you where they ranked last year for defense, and you can go by passing defense, you can go by rushing defense, where did they place in the NFL. It's phenomenal. So when you're picking your players, just like you said, that's where you go with NFL.com and look how they did, and then you'll be able to see their schedule and see, okay, well, how did Cam Newton do against a heavy run defense or a heavy pass? Stuff like that that really, I mean, you can take the research all the way down to that level where you can go week by week and learn each team and what they favor and match up like that. And it's time consuming, but I think it's fun. That's what I thrive on, and that's really my advice there.
Right, and and I think in talking about defenses too, a lot of people are going to, at least before preseason, a lot of people were looking at San Francisco's defense, and I have to say that while I love Patrick Willis, there is nobody that I love more. I love him, and I love Navarro Bowman, but Navarro is going to be out for 6 to 8 games. Possibly more because he had that nasty, horrible knee injury last year. But the other thing is too, if you watched, I watched both of the San Francisco preseason games that they broadcast here in DC. It was their first one in the new stadium, and then this one this past Sunday. I don't know what is going on with Aldon Smith. Maybe he is just, maybe since he can't rely on substances as much. I'm not trying to be nasty. I'm being very serious. Maybe because he's not relying on substances as much, he's not, feeling quite himself. But he has fallen off big time. So that's probably one that I would seriously give a second thought to if you were thinking about the San Francisco defense. There is something that I will admit to you. I'm human, and I have my biases, and I will admit it. There is something that deep down in my soul will never allow for me to click on the Seattle defense for my fantasy football team. Now, that's probably the stupidest move I could possibly make, but I'm going to admit that, I have a bias against them because of my boy, Mr. Sherman. Yeah, I don't think Carolina's defense is anything to sneeze at. I think that with Luke Kuechly, I think that that's I think that they could be as good as they were last year, if not better. So, you know what? We've given you just a few tips and a little bit of advice to get you going on your draft. I hope that you have good luck on your draft day. Mine is coming up next Monday, and I've got all my, I didn't do charts and spreadsheets this year. I just did a couple of lists and, ranked them out, and I've got all of my bye weeks. And I will admit that I color-coded bye weeks so that when I've got people on a list and all the different variations of the teams that I could possibly have, that I know that I don't have too many with the same bye week. What's interesting though is team names. This is something that I think has probably been more exciting to me to see over the time that I've played fantasy football than anything else. Do you have like a catchy or a unique name for your team?
I don't actually just use my Twitter handle, Pat's Fangirl. So I'm lame, but that's what I use. But I have seen some hilarious names that I am like envious that I didn't come up with it. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could claim I came up with that. And it is entertaining. If you guys are ever bored, Google fantasy football names, team names, and you will just die laughing. It is like those autocorrect fails on Facebook. Yeah, team names, hilarious. So, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of lame. I just go with my Twitter handle.
Well, I have for the longest time I was the Nova Spiders. Nova because I live in Northern Virginia, and Spiders because I don't know what it is, but they love my house. There's a little one, there's a baby one hanging out on the wall over there that I'm going to have to send to Jesus after the broadcast. But this year I've decided to pay homage to my favorite NFL player, Dick Sherman, up there in the Pacific Northwest. So my team name is You Mad Bro,
uh,
and my team logo is Grumpy Cat wearing a Seattle Seahawks jersey. So we'll see if Mr. Sherman brings me some luck this year with my team name and my avatar, since he is he's my guy in the league. Week 5, week 5. That's all I'm saying is week 5, and I'm probably going to be crying after week 5, but one can only hope. So we have a few more minutes left, and I just wanted to see, with all of the news that's been swirling around this week, um, take a couple of moments here and tell me, what your story of the week is, and maybe give me, a little bit of your point of view about it.
I didn't read into the details, but I did read that Pete Carroll and the Seahawks were fined $300,000 today for violating off-season rules, which I've been very vocal. I can't stand Pete Carroll. I absolutely can't stand him. And he broke rules at USC, obviously, tucked tail and ran up to Seattle before the punishment hit. And then, lo and behold, oh my gosh, he's getting in trouble again. Pete Carroll's violating rules. Oh my gosh, I'm so surprised. Not because that's his pattern of character. And I get so dang angry because Seattle can do no wrong. Yeah, okay, let's talk about Spygate for 10 freaking years because, oh my gosh, you murdered somebody. But Seattle's violating the rules. They were the most penalized team last year defensively. And it just blows my mind that they just can do no wrong. Pete Carroll can do no wrong, and he's won 1 Super Bowl, and all of a sudden, Belichick's won 3, yet they villainize him constantly in the media. And I could not even express right now how angry and irritated this makes me. Oh my gosh. So that is my thing for the week, and I'm really sad about Wes Welker. To be honest, I really am, because you get a couple concussions, it means you can get more. These are just the 3 that we know of that have been reported. I'm worried that his career may be coming to an end way too soon. He's a potential Hall of Famer, but at the risk to his health and his life. Concussions are nothing to laugh at. They're nothing to sweep under the rug. And so I was really sad. I was actually watching the game when he got hit. And, the player's like, oh, well, I could have gone low, but he's a short guy. Well, that's no excuse. I'm sorry, but I get football's a violent game. It's a contact sport, and I'm not trying to take that away. But these players need to be more conscious of where you're hitting someone, whether they're short, whether they're tall, I don't care. But as a player, you need to watch. And if these defenders would just wrap up, seriously, wrap up. It's a tackling drill, guys. Let's all learn it. We wouldn't have these hits that they're just banging off each other and causing concussions and blowing knees out and all these different things. And I get really irritated because it's not just an injury. It's a career. It's a life. And it's just, I wish people would just be a little more careful and watchful. So.
Right. And, it's beautiful that that you put your stories of the week in that order, because I was actually going to say that probably the funniest story of the week for me is the fact that Peyton Manning is a little less clenched, and I'll just leave it at that, than normal this week after going off, on Swearinger this week, and Peyton. I swear, Mr. Squeaky Clean is what I like to call him. He's Mr. Football. He doesn't do anything wrong, and there he goes over saying probably some extremely rude words to DJ Swearinger, and yeah, there you go with that. So that was my humorous story of the football week. I got the biggest kick out of that. I don't know why, but I just erupted into laughter when I saw that, because I just can't imagine Peyton being menacing enough, to anybody. But So I thought that that was rather humorous. But on a not so humorous note, but on a very similar note, I do have to say, and okay, yeah, am I a homer? Absolutely. This whole thing with Brandon Merriweather being suspended for the first two games of the season is straight up BS. The guy he hit, Torrey Smith, even said, hey, I'm not the one who makes the rules, or applies the rules, but dude should not have gotten into that kind of trouble because it was not a dirty hit. I think that the refs are throwing flags based upon reputation, and actually had that confirmed in a manner of speaking tonight when I was watching PTI. Love you, Tony. Love you, Wilbon. When they were talking about, Tony Kornheiser was talking about the fact that there is a list of like 20 or 21 players in the league who have a particular reputation for being a danger to others. And, when you're going to start throwing flags based upon reputation, that's just straight up wrong. It is, you can't have a game that is objective with that kind of a list. And when you have refs who see the number 31 and see that it's Brandon Merriweather and automatically throw a flag, and everybody, wants to say that he made a dirty hit when he doesn't. And the one thing that I would really like for the league to explain to us as fans is when you've got a defender who is trying to go low so that you don't have a helmet-to-helmet hit and is trying to turn into the hit with his shoulder, and then you have the receiver or the running back coming toward this guy, and he also lowers himself because he's trying to protect the ball and get himself prepared for the hit, and there's a helmet-to-helmet or a hit to the head. Why is that automatically on the defender? I disagree with that. I'm sure that, we'll never have an answer from King Goodell. Ruined it, Goodell. I was right there with you in trying to make the league safe as possible for everybody, but then you started this mess, and I'm over you now. I'm overthrow the king. Let's stage a coup. So I'm a little bit upset about that, just from the standpoint of, dude didn't do anything wrong. Brandon Merriweather, I stand with you, and I am against Roger Goodell and his band of minions who have suspended you for 2 games, but I still love you. Hail to the Redskins. That's enough of my rants. I want to thank my guest co-host, Erica Anderson, for joining me tonight. I want to thank you, my viewers, for tuning in. And Erica, why don't you tell us where we can find you and give your shout-outs?
You can find me on Twitter at PetsFangirl12. Also check out at GridironGirl.org. I also co-host a weekly radio show Sunday evenings at 3:30 Pacific time. You can find that on UltimateSportsTalk.com and Blog Talk Radio. So follow at Gridiron Beauties. I co-host with Oscar Lopez, who runs that account. Awesome. GridironGirl.org is actually in the process of being redesigned. So you guys, I've heard the plan for this, and you guys are going to want to check it out. It's going to be phenomenal. We're going to have places for all our media, videos, all that stuff. My Are You Kidding Me is coming back. You will find that probably in about a week. That is my weekly rant. I love doing it. You will be able to find that on the site. And, we all have those moments, like the Brandon Merriweather thing, where you're like, are you kidding me? Like, why is that happening? What is going on? So, yeah, that's what I have going on. I would like to say I am so sick and tired of Sue that plays for the Lions. If anybody needs to be suspended, it's that guy. He repeatedly, flagrantly disobeys the rules and does not care. He late hit the quarterback. I forget who they were playing last week. And he just gets flags, and that's it. I'm just like, if anyone needs to be suspended, that guy doesn't care. And I'm just so tired of that guy. So I just had to put that out there.
Well, folks, you know, it's been another really good night of football conversation. We've had a lot of fun here. I hope that the little bit of advice and the few tips that we were able to give you get you on your feet, feeling a little bit better about fantasy football. Good luck to you this year in your draft. Good luck to you in your fantasy football leagues. And I want to say thank you for your continued support, for your feedback, and for encouraging me to continue Cover 3. I really do appreciate everybody who participates in any way, shape, or form with the show. I want to thank Erica again for appearing, and I will see you guys in the next week or two, and we will probably be talking about the season opener, and I look forward to seeing you then. Y'all take care. Have a great football week, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.